The Celica and the Supra are two of the most iconic Japanese cars of all time. But they weren't the fastest Toyota. No, they may get all the racing cred, but it was the little midship runabout that was the king of cars in Toyota, the MR2. Like many of our stories, it involves the 1970s oil crises, which saw a shift from performance to fuel efficiency, and many say the era of performance cars was over. But Toyota said otherwise and decided, what if we make a car that was fun, efficient, and affordable? Is that even legal? Isn't there like a law saying you only have 2 out of 3 and the third is an impossibility? But crucially, it was never designed to be a true sports car, because true sports cars are expensive and inefficient, and we need all 3 here, people. Still, the mid-engined SAX prototype was no slouch, and it impressed F1 legend Dan Gurney when he was working on it during testing. And by 1984, it had evolved into the SV3 concept, which was finally ready for production, where it went its final name change to MR2, or Midship Runabout Two-Seater. I mean, at least it's a practical acronym. This sucker launched in 1984 to a critical sensation. Sure, it looked a bit like that other mid-engine Fiat X19 or that other mid-engined affordable Pontiac Fiero, but this was a completely different ball game. It had the 4A63 from the Toyota AE86 dropped smack dab in the middle, making 128 horsepower, or for stupid EPA regulations, 112 here in the States. But again, this is not a sports car, it's supposed to be fun, which is why the handling was tuned by former Lotus engineers, so that while critics praised the peppy power output, that wasn't its job. They absolutely loved it in the corners, because 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds isn't very fast. But when you're chucking it through the bends, having a good time, and not caring about whatever disaster is unfolding around the world, it's a brilliant little car. It was good enough to earn Motor Trend's Import Car of the Year and secure a slot on both Car and Drivers and Road and Track's 10 Best lists. And Toyota was just getting started, because in order to make up for the horsepower loss from the US catalytic converters that I mentioned earlier, Toyota decided to bolt on a frickin' supercharger, lower the compression ratio, and bump horsepower up to 145. Sure, the supercharger and the necessary gearbox reinforcements added some weight, but the 0 to 60 is now a very respectable 6.5 seconds. This SC model also offered additional spring stiffening and aluminum wheels to further improve the handling, because what is the point of adding more power if you don't add more handling to go with it? What is the point? Which brings me to rallying. The Group B Toyota Celica, while very good in endurance rallies like in Africa, it was no match for the all-wheel drive rivals that were decimating European rally stages. So Toyota Team Europe began developing a new rally car for the up-and-coming 1988 WRC Group S regulations. Now, like Audi, who made the RS001, or Lancia that made the ECV2, no one actually knew what the regulations were truly going to be, so they just went mad and basically built a hyped-up, even crazier Group B car. Now, the final Group B rules say that there were virtually no homologation cars necessary, and a maximum 300 horsepower. However, all of the engineers didn't get that last memo, So by the time the rules were sent out, Toyota had already finished the 222D based on the MR2, and it was already testing. So it was a fully complete car, weighing 750 kilograms and making up to 750 horsepower. In 1986, that is Koenigsegg 1-to-1 power-to-weight ratios. The thing was insane. Also, from all reports, it was terrifying, because it was not really a finished car in the handling department. It was sort of massive power, all-wheel drive, no weight, and good luck, sir, you're on your own. Of course, I guess Toyota's factory drivers must have been grateful when Group B and Group S were banned in 1986, making the terrifying death machine of an MR2 completely useless, and in fact it wasn't even shown to the public in any significant form until the mid-2000s. Yeah. The second-gen road-spec MR2, however, was a bit more friendly than the brutal monster that was the Group S car. It gained a lot of luxuries, like power steering and a larger interior and 400 pounds to the curb weight. However, it had a new 2-liter turbo making up to 218 horsepower, so it balanced itself out quite nicely. And once again, Toyota completely tuned the car for the twisties. It was very well balanced, and critically, the suspension was completely redone. You see, the problem with the original one was that the mid-engine short wheelbase no weight meant that it was prone to snap oversteer, and this new suspension almost completely eliminated that. And then we have the straight line speed. It could out-accelerate cars well above its pay grade. I'm talking the Supra, the NSX, and even the Ferrari 348. And in stopping terms, it was second only to the NSX. And when they raced it on track against the previously mentioned competition, it frickin' won! This was a true working man's hero. A car that cost not much more than a base model Mustang, but it could go toe-to-toe with its Kingpin 2JZ Holy Supra, as well as $100,000 exotics. This was the ultimate underdog, the Rocky Balboa of Toyota's lineup. And unlike the Group S MR2, it actually competed in motorsports, and competed well. It won its class twice in the Super GT Championship, set class speed records in excess of 200 miles an hour, and even competed at Le Mans with a 600 horsepower V8 privateer version called the Sard MC8. It was so good at racing that Toyota decided to throw a little bit of a present for it. Toyota Racing Development, or TRD, built 35 homages to their very successful GTC cars, called the TRD 2000 GT, mixture of TRD, MR2, and the legendary 2000 GT sports car of the 60s. These were the rarest MR2s ever made. They were all completely custom built to order by TRD, so no two of them are exactly the same. These had astronomical price tags as a result, but they also had astronomical performance. Some of these things, because again, they're all completely different, were up to 2.5 inches wider, 300 pounds lighter, and made 300 more horsepower than the base MR2. These were the true... If you thought the original MR2 could take on the Ferraris, this could take on the Ferrari Testarossas. In today's terms, it would be almost a hypercar killer. Sadly, the third gen could not be considered a hypercar killer. When it was launched in 2000, it faced the newest change so far. It was now a Spider with a Y, with a 1.8-liter four-cylinder making 138 horsepower. Are we sure this is still an MR2, guys? I mean, it was still a phenomenal handling car, but it wasn't really an MR2, and despite offering all the amenities of the second-gen MR2 while still being significantly lighter, sales had plummeted, and by 2007, it had officially ended production. Now, you might have noticed that we're in sort of a performance car renaissance for Toyota. The Celica ST205 has almost been rebirthed into the GR Yaris, while the AE86 has been born in the GT86 and, of course, the Mark V Supra. But the MR2 has just sort of been forgotten about. It's the only one of the original Toyota Triplets that hasn't been relaunched. Although Tetsuya Tada, head of Gazoo Racing, has stated that there is a desire to create a spiritual successor, and while they haven't confirmed anything at all apart from that statement and that desire, if it does launch, honestly, I'm betting it'll be all electric. And many people will get all defensive and huffy and puffy about it, but honestly, for a car like the MR2, which is all about handling and all about, going through the twisties and not about the V8 noise or the V12 revs, I think it's a perfect fit for an electrification. With the floor-mounted batteries, the lower center of gravity could give it even better cornering forces, could make it even better through the twisties than the MR2s that it came before. So, Toyota, you better get on this because the opportunity is staring you right in the face.